Last time, where I take a look back on my redo review of Urusei Yatsura Only You, an anime movie that is first directed by Mamoru Oshii, which is basically the first of the Urusei Yatsura movie film series. Today, I'm going to be taking a look back on doing a redo review on Fist of the North Star, the movie. Because I have been rewatching this one on DVD this morning, though, because I want to do this for the first time here as a redo as well. But it's either you do this or do an anime review on one of the Fist of the North Star Legends of the True Savior series ones, which I haven't reviewed the Legends of the True Savior Fist of the North Star series of movies or OVAs as of yet as well. But I will rewatch those at one point as well. So let's review this today on Anime Retrospect as a redo review here. Happy 36th anniversary to Fist of the North Star that came out on this day back in 1986. Fist of the North Star started as a manga that started in the 80s as well. So, let's do a redo review on Fist of the North Star, the movie. This is the 1986 one this time. The story, how it starts off, a beautiful scenery of how life is, how it expects of how the yin and yang thing going on in between is what the narration explains about it as well. This was all a beautiful scenery, but instead it goes into right into wasteland when the world's becoming a post-apocalyptic wasteland in this story of how it progresses in Fist of the North Star, how it goes. And that's how we get to see the characters Kenshiro and Yuria, who is Kenshiro's fiance, who is with him of how they wanted to know something, how it happened is how it goes. It's like, where can we go something? Where do we do this? How do we ever want to find somewhere if there's food and water, clean water and food everywhere in this post-apocalyptic wasteland as well. But that wasn't long until Shin and his minions arrived as well, when he wants to take Yuria away from Kenshiro. So instead, Kenshiro wanted to fight against Shin, but instead he just got himself with the bleeding from the stance of what Shin did to Kenshiro, especially right in the air as well. Something how it hurts him as well. So Kenshiro realized that he wanted to do something to Shin, but Shin's minions had to take him away from how they expected as how it goes. When Kenshiro realized that Shin gave Kenshiro the 7 scars on his chest with the finger as well. And that's how Shin was forcing Yuria to be with Shin as well, which is not in a good way. Meanwhile, somewhere else from the distance, Jagi and Rao, or pronunciation as Rao, or whatever you want to pronounce the name, or Ken-O for short as well, because how they were wanting to get Yuria at first as well. Jagi finds a wounded Kenshiro afterwards as well, and he throws Kenshiro from the cliff, the edges of the cliff as well. now the world's a wasteland. Everyone's finding clean water and food everywhere. Instead, they were surrounded by those troublemaking marauders, which kills the victims as well. Meanwhile, from above, as well, in a little Mad Max feel-like montage way, where Bat and Lynn were outrunning the motorcycle-riding marauding goons, as how it goes as well. It leads into the post-apocalyptic wasteland-like city as how it goes, particularly, which is something right out of Mad Max as how this goes. From the looks as how it... So, this basically how it seems of how, in its own certain matter, or from the above, especially of these vehicles, in these, how the city looks all ruined, as seeing these types of efforts, as how these innocents as well, when they wanted to take that stuff, when Lynn whacks one of those marauding goons with a stick, because she was mute and could not speak. One of the they were trying to kill her, but she cries out in silence of how it answers the call, which something sets it off from the distance. And this wasn't long until how the city was destroyed, until something covered in stone rock crashes through like those skyscraper-like building from something from out of nowhere, as how it goes in this story as well. And yet it was Kenshiro appeared, but this time he has a beard in this one, so he has to fight off those marauding motorcycle goons, especially because despite how powerful Kenshiro is, so he can overpower those marauding motorcycle goons with the pressure points of how he can kill them, particularly is how it goes. When he tells one of those marauding victim goons who are on motorcycles to put Lynn down, but they almost could have killed her. So he fights off one of those motorcycle riding goons with his pressure points with his fists. So that could kill the motorcycle riding goon whose head exploded and blood everywhere. So this wasn't long until Kenshiro shaves his beard off. So he basically cures Lynn from being mute, so she could finally speak, and then gave her with those bags of seeds what Yuria had, until he walks off as well. Meanwhile, somewhere else, we get to the scene where Ray fights off those villain goons, especially with his Nanto Suichoken, especially with his hands as well. Especially of what they had a lot to begin with, as how it goes, as well as some other things as well. So him and Kenshiro had to fight off those marauding those bandits who are in that and who thinks that Joggy is the Fist of the North Star, but he basically... Speaking of which, Joggy is becoming a manipulative, villain-like asshole who thinks he's in charge of, who is always behind this, so he becomes a powerful, hungry asshole when he had Ray's sister named Irie, who is one of the survivors who is alive. She was kidnapped as well. How it's behind all this is how it goes. So Kenshiro realizes of how he has the flashback of how Jagi was being a sniveling, impatient, how a pest who wanted to be becoming a Fist of the North Star. So Kenshiro has to fight off Jagi, and then Jagi survived with the pressure points all over his head and the chest. That he was lucky he was not dead, so he killed his own underling because he's wearing a helmet. Meanwhile, Kenshiro and Rei destroyed into Jagi's fortress area, so they encounter Heart, who is the fat character in this story, as how this portrays how it goes. As well, I expect to see Kenshiro has to fight off Heart with his fists, despite how... And then he just uses so many kicks to fight off Heart, just to get in his way from being into Jagi's fortress, as how it goes, particularly. Of how he would expect. But, yeah. And that was until one of Jagi's minions, Heart, always exploded, especially from his gut and the blood everywhere. After Kenshiro finishes off to kill Heart as well, with his interesting technique, despite he's in the remaining of how in the Hokuto Shinken technique of how what Kenshiro has to do in this one. So they had to find... So Kenshiro and Rei has to find Jagi surrounded by one of his minions, and Rei realized that Jagi has kidnapped Airi, and especially how Jagi is tricking Rei to fight Kenshiro, but Jagi was basically a coward when Kenshiro told Rei, so Rei has to fight off Jagi's minions. So this wasn't long until Jagi and Kenshiro are on top of the building, so they had to fight off against how in its own how Jagi reveals the truth of how it's what Shin takes away a Yuria away from Kenshiro, of how he saw, especially of how the sudden changes of how this goes, especially of how this didn't realize the fact that Jagi is basically your typical asshole villain who is basically like an asshole as well, especially when he has the lot to do is, but then Jagi has to fight Kenshiro as well, but just like from the episode, more different from the episode as well. Once they're inside the building after it crashed over, especially of how until Jagi's head explodes, like especially something come out of Jagi's head after Kenshiro defeats Jagi when he overpowered him as well. Yeah, that's how Jagi's death seems it goes. That's how completely of how bloody how Jagi has. Yeah, especially the severe death. Meanwhile, Rei has to fight off Jagi's goons with the Nantosui Chokin, so he had to realize that if Airi could recognize if Rei is there with her as well, but her eyes are closed. So they had to feel like they could figure out if something happened to Airi as well. So meanwhile, Bat and Lin realized how they show Airi the flower as well, especially from which is a good sign of how it's given in the reason, long story short, kind of feel of how the surface goes in this one. We get to see your typical damsel in distress of how it goes, isn't it? Speaking of which, from far before, Yuria is being held at Shin's area place as well. Of how he wants to give her the attention he could always, but she doesn't know if Kenshiro is either dead or alive. But of how they could figuring to the point of views as well. Meanwhile, we get to see Kenshiro and Rei again camp out for the night, with how they could figure out of how Kenshiro wants to save Yuria as well, of how the limits of how it goes, of how you would see, and this wasn't until the arrival of Keno, also known as Rao. Yeah, the Rao the Conqueror. When he arrives, he has to fight off those other goons, minions, especially Jackal's minions as well. Especially when he has to fight off to the prey of his comrade and command. But when Rao has to fight off this other villain, who is always being in silver, and so something of how his flesh, like silver, killed him, if it does, as how it goes. Its only difference is that how you would know of how there's only a couple dates of how this thing goes. Yeah, because they say that Agi was the fake Fist of the North Star himself as well. But Kenshiro is the real Fist of the North Star, is alive. Yuria finds out that Kenshiro is alive. So she had to escape Shin's fortress so she could make a run just to get away from the building. Especially how she could see if Kenshiro is alive, to the point out of how things is going well until she just wants to escape as well. But that wasn't long until Rao the Conqueror has kidnapped Yuria. So he came to Shin that he wants the girl as well. But Shin thinks that Rao is up to something as well. A long way. If he was stealing a woman, as how, to the point of views, as he's basically tries to steal Yuria as well, because nothing goes in his way. But when Kenshiro sees something in the distance, because he knows the carnage going on, well, then he came to Shin's fortress, of how he fights off Shin in a post-fight injuries, but he realized that something that, like those punches on Shin's chest after. But when Shin tries to fight Kenshiro, but Kenshiro only has the one punch on Shin. But this how it was till Shin dies, and he wants to know that where did Yuria is gone. But he knew that Rao the Conqueror has kidnapped Yuria. Accordingly, that's how you would expect. Until, meanwhile, from far, Rei, along with Bat and Lin, once again, they were heading off to see something in the city of Cassandra, of how they were chanting for Rao the Conqueror, including when the arrival of Rao and his minions appeared, as how this goes, particularly as well. Until Bat and Lin first saw Rao the Conqueror, especially from the point. But when Bat and Lin wanted to show Yuria the flower when she was in the dungeon as well, as the visiting sort of feeling of how this goes. What that was until Rao the Conqueror has found Yuria, and then she crucified her on that giant wooden cross in the city of Cassandra. That's how it goes, particularly as well. More different than the TV series, the certain way, but that's how it was until because Ray has found out that he gave the flower to Yuria as well, just to see how she could have it for Kenshiro if she could realize. But that was until Ray has finally killed off one of Rao the Conqueror's minions' arms off with the Nanto Sweet Shokin technique as well. But that's how it was until Ray wants to fight off against Rao in a bloody, gruesome-like battle in a montage with the song Heart of Madness. And that was until Rao the Conqueror tells Ray that he smells the smell of death. And in no efforts of how Rao the Conqueror kills Ray as well, when Kenshiro has found out of how this carnage goes, in its own certain mayhem. So Kenshiro has to fight off the battle against Rao the Conqueror in its own little battle in the city of Cassandra in the air, like beating each other with blood gushing out in a death-like battle in its own sudden death, as how this happened in this one as well. In its own certain matter of how until he was weakened as well. But that was when Kenshiro has fallen to being wounded, Rao the Conqueror has found out, almost killed, but he saw Lin appeared, of how to convince him to spare Kenshiro, of how it reminded Rao the Conqueror realize what Ryuken said before the death. Ryuken dies, powered without perception, with spiritually useless, is therefore of any true value. Before he disappears, something later on as well as how it happened, of how how it's understandable, how it's where both Rao and Kenshiro fights more in its own different certain thing, how it happened in this one. Yeah. With said as well, other than Rei's death and Kenshiro fighting Rao the Conqueror, things just go pretty long, certain type of matter of facts. When Bat and Lin has find out there's some flowers growing from the soil and the ground, hoping that the city will be back to normal. And that's how you end the movie, with Kenshiro searching for the love of Yuria. So that's the story on Fist of the North Star, though. It's very great and very suburb. It's like a retelling of the story of the Fist of the North Star TV series, like the first, the second Fist of the North Star series, and in general, particularly. Toki was never appeared from the Fist of the North Star TV series, nor does the other villain characters like the fake Toki Amiiba, and there's other characters like Mamiya, Yuda, and there's and Souther and Judah as well, especially for or Yuda, or whatever you want to pronounce the character's name in the Fist of the North Star TV series. None of them appeared in it, which is very different. We all know, especially in the characters I'm talking about as well, for how this happened as well. It's a lot very more different, though, especially the gore in this. This seemed to how it's all a little toned down in the Japanese release as well. when Fist of the North Star premiered in its first week in Japan. It was censored, though. However, when it was first brought over to Italy, it was uncensored because of how the blood and the violence, how it particularly goes for an anime film like this one particularly in general. Because it wasn't the Japanese version that is uncensored, it was the Italian version when it was first came out on video in Italy during the 90s as well. It's a certain own little way is how it goes as well. And yeah, because that's how... For the value facts as well, if you love watching good anime for a change compared to other animes now, like the current modern anime nowadays, Fist of the North Star is the one you want to watch as well, as from the looks as well, in its own how you love of this. In the same way how video games and Mortal Kombat were becoming a thing in the 90s, well, how it's expectedly how Fist of the North Star almost made me introduced to anime, but it's also partially responsible for my taste in movies receiving a cult following as well. Fist of the North Star, in my opinion, the anime one, I loved it. It is way better, and this is the real Fist of the North Star you have to watch. It is way better than the crap-ass live-action movie with Gary Daniels as well. My score for Fist of the North Star anime movie that was released in 1986, a 10 out of 10. In my opinion, I consider this to be my favorite movie, and this is part of your recommendations if you ever loved watching shonen anime as well. If you ever loved watching old school 80s anime as well, especially if you want to binge watch on something as well, which I thought it was pretty cool to watch as well, for the recommendations as well. The music is pretty good. Yeah, the song Heart of Madness, I love to hear it in the montage every time I see where Rei is fighting Rao the Conqueror as well, from what I understand. Well, 1986 was the same year we had Yurusei Yatsura, Lum the Forever, and Meizani Koku, which came out on the same year. Fist of the North Star, the movie, has got the attention in Japan the most in the 80s as well, from what I understand basically as well. Because I wanted to revisit this anime as well, from the points of view as well. Especially of how you want to know for Fist of the North Star as well. Like, this got me thinking, how this as well, because this is a lot more different as opposed to watching the TV series as well, of how they care for this one as well. And for the thing of this as well, I loved it, because I really enjoyed it as well, in my opinion. Especially if you want to binge watch on something, watch Fist of the North Star, the movie. This one right here. Because I highly recommend you watch the anime movie. Because if you have it on DVD or Blu-ray, give it a watch as well. If you want to watch an anime like Fist of the North Star, the movie, the one that was released on March 8th, 1986, watch it. I highly recommend it. Because I highly recommend you can, if you have it on DVD or Blu-ray as well. So that's going to be it for my redo review on Fist of the North Star, the movie, here on Anime Retrospect for today. Thank you for watching, but before we go, here's what I'm going to say for this one. Well, because I had to come by on revisiting classic anime as well, from what I understand the point of views as well. Because Fist of the North Star, the movie, is basically my favorite. Because we all know it has the English dub from Streamline Pictures as well, particularly as well, because how this gotten to the point, though. And although it did have an English dub on when it was first released on video in the 90s in the US by Streamline Pictures on here, and I never knew that this is a good example of watching old anime as well, from what I understand basically as well. Hope subscribe for content. My Anime Planet link in the description down below. If you want to check out my Anime Planet, link will be in the description. If you want to check out my Anime Planet, let me know your thoughts in the comments section below about what do you think of Fist of the North Star, the movie, the anime one I'm talking about. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section as well. Be sure to subscribe to my channel, RuRoniK95. Feel free to join my channel, especially if you're new to my channel as a newcomer. Smack the notifications bell button. Be sure to get notified also as well for the latest updates. Smack the like button if you like this video. And keep it otaku for this redo review on Anime Retrospect. Even though I've been doing it rarely, but because I want to do something a little motivative as well, from what I understand basically as well. So this is RuRoniK95 saying, thank you for watching this on Anime Retrospect. Until next time, I get to cover something for a change. Until next time.